Hello, Charlie TCG here. Welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm breaking down everything that happened at the Pokemon 2025 World Championships that happened this past weekend over in Anaheim. We're going to look at the day 1 and day 2 meta see exactly the difference and what were the most popular archetypes that the top players of the world were playing. It's also bringing down the sort of placing list as well, from Gardevoir to Zoroark, and of course, like some Gholdengo with Joltik. Why are these the most popular archetypes, which are very well at the top table at the end of the Pokemon World Championship series? At the end, I'm going to discuss exactly how we can really see this format really evolving going into our Mega Evolution set, which we're going to get in just a moment's time. So, without further ado, let's get right to the video. So first of all, look at the day one meta share analysis. And of course, at the very top was Gholdengo, being at 22.9%. Now, I always thought this would be the most popular archetype. It's been the talk of the town for pretty much the last few months leading up to the World Championship, and again, two incredibly powerful cards, Air Balloon and Genesect, really did highlight the archetype to be kind of being a rogue, sort of a big tier 2 archetype to be right up there, be very tip top. Some people did think I did downplay like Dragapult. I know I talked a lot about it in my tier list, but when I break down and see like what would be the most popular one, Dragapult, I didn't actually include in the list. I didn't think it might actually catch that number. But it actually was in that second place, being at 17.2%. And of course, with that partner, Dusknoir. Relevant was the third with 13%. With 10.1% was Raging Bolt, and very, very low, nearly 5% was minus Grimmsnarl, and 4.4 was Flareon knocked out the Eevee Box. So what can we really break down from this metagame? Obviously, of course, Gholdengo was the most popular archetype, and we actually saw a lot of people attacking for it against this one of the type of plays. Dragapult going to fights of Dusknoir. We saw Flareon Box kind of be a huge increase. We didn't see the likes of Crustle or Typhlosion, which obviously I was much more hyped on. I think this could do really well, but there was only like 6 total decks of those archetypes. So definitely, no one really put that much faith in this one. Gardevoir we saw went away from the item lock. We did see Jellicent appear here and there in sort of next game, but obviously the winning list did not include the likes of Genesect and go to more traditional Monkey Dory sort of build, which we will discuss in a little bit. Raging Bolt, I couldn't always kind of be up there at the top, but kind of be at fourth place at 10.1%. Definitely a lot lower than I really expected. People definitely put a lot more perspective in the likes of Gholdengo and Dragapult to be up there in much more higher numbers. Biggest surprise that I really think is that minus Grimmsnarl could be to like 4.9%. Now, of course, we could go here with, well, Charlie is only its second legal opponent in our sort of format. And again, that is absolutely true. And we can see it's definitely increasing maybe a little bit more. We saw it increase through well in Japan. We haven't really had that really good translation over. This could potentially be the early sort of Dragapults of metagame, which we've seen. And I also don't think that minus Grimmsnarl was actually a very good popular archetype to play. If Gardevoir's going to be up there very, very top, of course, you don't really want to be putting out the Frostfest to help out the Midori damage, and Dragapult can easily remove all the Frostfest so that way likes of Dusknoir as well. And one thing I really liked about this one on Gholdengo is we saw really a big sort of disparity from going away from likes of Sizzle. The baby um Gholdengo was kind of like the main sort of focus point and secondary attacking option, but we did see some other fun, so creative choices, like the Majority or having the Iron Hands and Orion and Pikachu for good late game and early game, very good aggression. And of course, my favorite thing took is the fact that the team game in the top 8 placement. My favorite Pokemon game, a top 8 sort of spot, which is really exciting. But how on earth did this day 1 go into day 2? Well, Gholdengo made even stronger being by nearly being 30% of the metagame, being 29.9%. Dragapult gained a little bit less, being at 16.5. Raging Bolt and Gardevoir pretty much swap places, similar to percentage-wise, but there was another 2 key decks which did come in, which are like of Charizard and Dragapult with Monkey Dory. This traditional straight Dragapult build, which we've kind of seen have a lot of success. Now, I would say at more of a top sort of table, so we did see more of the Dragapult Dusknoir. I think they are just much stronger. They have that good checkmaking sort of situation, and we definitely saw some great sort of highlighting about why this was so powerful and why Dusknoir was the most stronger partner. And I'd really like to see how Gholdengo was still other being the very top. But if we now look at sort of the 16 sort of breakdown, we can see here that Gholdengo only really makes up 4 of the placements of top 16. Yes, I know you can go with try that's basically 25% of the metagame of top 16, which is still very powerful, but it doesn't break into that top 4. From having that 30% meta share, we really expect to do really well. But we can see there were some very, very big surprises in here. The first one, of course, is 2 Zoroark making it into top 8. And of course, the top 8 list in here was actually piloted as well by Gabriel Fernandez, which nearly completed his perfect season, which is missing out and losing in the finals of the World Championship. So still incredibly impressive sort of placement, and to also see that how powerful Zoroark is. And we're going to talk about exactly what is the best way to play Zoroark going forward. The other sort of key sort of pieces we can see here is we can see Gardevoir kind of being in 2 sort of ones, and basically sort of Dragapult builds is a lot of Duster one. But we see a lot of Charizard and a lot of Gholdengo. I think this is definitely a good sort of understanding about these are very, very powerful archetypes in this new sort of format. I think Charizard gained that new sort of kind of lease of life right now. I think it worked well because they can use these single price variety of attacking options to have a good answer into Gholdengo. And of course, you have the now Maximum Bell with likes of Dusknoir to actually hit out for these big one-hit K potentials much, much earlier on. There was definitely some Corsair Mask Ogapon plays being played in like some Gholdengo decks, and of course, the likes of Zoroark. So Charizard did have some tricky times with this one. We did see some ways around this about how Charizard really kind of overcame that situation. And definitely from having likes of Dusknoir and using Chummy and Chiyu with the likes of Defiance Spell to hit those big one-hit KOs. Now, I really think this is a very exciting match game. Again, huge congratulations to Riley actually winning with Gardevoir against the likes of Dragapult Dusknoir. As I said, Taylor's all the time, even likes of Disney said that, and of course Pokemon did as well. Last weekend, if you saw on their Twitter, and it has been in the finals, and they've been at the very top of the archetype pretty much the entirety of this year. Those two sort of decks, so it kind of is a very good fitting sort of send off that those two decks would be competing against each other in the finals. Now let's actually look at Riley's sort of list, and we can see here that the good sort of straight away match in the older list. The reason I say this is we don't see any sort of Bufflin, mainly Scream Tellers and sort of attacking choice, but we do see the return of Fluttermane. And we have not seen Fluttermane appear in Gardevoir for a while. We still do play like the Klepke to help out against like sort of what's it called? The likes of something Genesect and Miraidons on the bench. But I really like about Fluttermane because it shuts off the active Pokemon's ability, which I think is definitely a much stronger sort of situation. Because it shuts off whatever it is. It's been such a long time since I've seen Fluttermane, but it's such a great sort of attacking option. It works well with the 4 copies of Monkey Dory, so you can move around some damage counter and that damage placement you get to do on the secondary attack. With Fluttermane, you can get that easy one-hit KO as well on some easy low HP single price Pokemon. Of course, we have the Secret Box, which I think is the same main sort of staple right now in Gardevoir, but a deck which we haven't really seen in this sort of version of Gardevoir is that TM Devolution. With 4 Mikidori's, Fluttermane, Screamtail, you have a lot of sort of bench sort of sniping capability. Of course, having that TM Devo is really strong. Most people went back to the 50 HP Gimmickle, so actually the TM Devo works very much well in Gardevoir's favour. And of course, Mew EX as well. No serendipity, but we saw how powerful Mew EX is in combination with likes of Lily's Clefairy. You can play over likes of Dragapult very easily on by taking those easy to prior to that there, free for weakness because of that very zone ability on Lily's Clefairy. The rest of the list I think is very straightforward, very low on the recovery, so cards only 2 on Stretcher and 1 Super Rod, so kind of like activating your Screamtail as your main sort of attacking option of choice, you definitely need to be much more precarious about when you're placing and when you're attacking with this one to activate your Night Stretchers and Super at the right time. I really like this first place. This is from Riley, and I think it's very powerful. Of course, it did end up winning against the likes of this Dragapult Dusknoir. And this is kind of a much more of a straightforward sort of build, which you kind of seen how my Dragapult is really going this one. The 2-2-1 line of Dusknoir is very much a more straightforward build. We kind of had the 2-1-2 line of Dusknoir, but I think the 2-2-1 is much powerful. Having the Dust Clocks to do that 50 extra damage counters on the Pokemon, it helps you hit those numbers without Pokemon having 90 HP. You never can struggle with in the early source game if you don't have activated to your Dust Clocks. Having up in your energy has become the main sort of stable of your ace deck of choice because you can easily get it out from the hill depth and you don't need to rely on anything like the jamming tower, which this deck really does rely on, right? Really lowering all of your opponent's sort of pull cards you might have into as well. Of course, the likes of Air Balloon, you could trap something in with the likes of Budu, even though you might not be doing damage to Genesect, but trapping a natural spot, forcing your opponent to attach 2 energies or find their Jura scenario can be very difficult and actually waste a lot of their draw factor, whilst you're just slowly and whittling them down with some item lock pressure. I think this list is nearly perfect for Dragapult. I really love all the cards this kind of goes through. So the latter is for that free retreat option with your basic Pokemon. And of course that Blood Moon Earth you don't really want to have that stuck in the active spot. And even having that 1 copy of Monkey Dory, because you are of course that 3 Luminous Energy, it just works very well. The only thing which I might have some criticism of this is only that 1 copy of Fire Energy. Normally we see a 2-2 split of Psychic and Fire. I can see the rationale of having only 1 copy of Fire and high count of Psychic, so you can activate like some My Bend from Monkey Dory. Now we're looking at the third place Raging Bolt list here, and from a player from Japan, and it does have quite a lot of similarities with what we saw do well in Japan. First thing is that Shen Pao added into Raging Bolt, and I feel like this is becoming a mainstay right now on the list. The idea is you feel like you're bored with loads of some Pokemon with areas you're under depth, but some of them can be quite easily damaged from like the Dragapult damage, from this generally very strong liabilities. So you can use that Shin Power to discard a TM card and of course discard all of those liabilities as well. What I love about this, it does play the other Koraidon as well, which has a fighting type hit stun for weakness, which I think is really powerful. The only downside is it is weak to Psychic, so that is one of the struggles against types of Gardevoir, but I still think doing 180 damage for 2 energies is still very, very powerful on a single price Pokemon. From first spin to boss, again, very much simple what we've seen in most of the format right now, and still plays out one copy of Squawkabilly, because I think this is the only deck which really does capitalize and actually really does require Squawkabilly in the early game to have it set up. I like going to the 3-3 line of Noctowl. I think Noctowl is definitely much more stronger right now than Raging Bolt. In the list which you've seen, which they don't really have access to this one, Raging Bolt really does fall apart. I think it still had a huge sort of tremendous sort of place that Raging Bolt is still up at the top sort of tables. I think it did very well at the Worlds last year. And of course, doing well at Worlds this year is still no feat whatsoever. It's still very, very powerful. And this list is very consistent. So I recommend playing Raging Bolt going forward. So definitely the one I would choose for you guys to play. And going to fourth is Charizard. And what about this Charizard list is there are so many amazing things going for this one. First of all, it has a very, very big line of Charizard, 4-2-3, which I haven't really seen Charizard in quite a while. We normally have like a 3-2-2. Or even like a 3-2-3 line. So I really like having a much more thicker line of Charizard. Going with the mainly 100 HP Charmeleon, which I think is perfect because having that 90 damage, it helps you in that Corso Math Ogerpon. It helps you in that Gholdengo sort of math sort of range of Maxim Belt. So I really like having the 100 HP one that I think really helps you in the late sort of game. I like having Maxim Belt with it up with likes of Dusknoir because we do play likes of Super Rod to get back out. So Pokemon, so you don't need to rely on having that Night Stretcher in there. So I do like having what Maximo can unlock Charizard to actually start hitting in games game much earlier on. I've always talked about it. Cleffa is what Charizard wants to have and not Badu. It wants to be attacking him with everything, doing nearly 200 plus damage on turn 2 instead of relying on potentially a Badu very, very slow start. That's what Dragapult thrives. Charizard thrives in that big, very aggressive early starting. Chi-Yu, of course, is that cornerstone Mathogger point, as well as also into the likes of Gholdengo as a good sort of secondary attacking option. Another sort of good key cards in here, which we kind of will probably potentially see a mainstay in Charizard. First is Mist Energy. Protection from TM Default is just so, so strong right now. And of course, also any sort of damage counters that put in. Confusion from Monkey Dory. So loads of stuff can really just hinder and stop from the opponents with their amenities or side, which I really like. And of course, another powerful card is Briar. And we did see this have success over this past weekend, making sure Charizard can make potentially a 1-prize Pokemon become a 2-prize Pokemon, which is very powerful, or even a 2-prize become a 3-prizer. And looking at Dusknoir, you can potentially get a big sort of 1-hit KOs much earlier on, to clean out potentially nearly all your prize cards in the late game. I think Briar has perfect right now in Charizard. We talked about it a lot in the early of the season, and now we're going to see it return at the end of the season, and hopefully definitely going a bit more forward when we're seeing a lot more Gardevoir plays, and of course Mega Gardevoir, which gives out more additional prize cards. Not going into another Charizard list here. This one here is just a little bit different. It plays likes of Secret Box instead of likes of Maximum Melt because it does play likes of Defiance Spell to do additional damage in the early sort of game. Having that Mesagoza, okay, that flip to get any sort of Pokemon, definitely is a good sort of way around this one. And still plays, of course, the Pidgeot and Dusknoir lights, and that hasn't really changed. The only sort of Pokemon card which is definitely really kind of like changes a little bit is it does play that 90 HP Charmeleon to protect it from the likes of TM Devo and any sort of damage counters being placed, and of course having that Squawkabilly as well for that really aggressive draw power in the start of the game. On Briar as well, we talked about how powerful Briar is swinging the game stage completely. When your opponent has 2 prize cards, you can take an additional prize from any Pokemon you take KO, and of course you get to place when you can activate Dusknoir afterwards, so you can even make your opponent go down to only 1 prize remaining, but the Dusknoir obviously can help set up this great sort of maths. I really like where Charizard really is going forward right now, and I think we could definitely see a lot more Charizard going forward. Speaking about a deck which I think is going to see a lot more play going forward, it's End Zoroark. And what I love about End Zoroark is it's had back-to-back top 8 placements and NEIC and now Worlds, and it's completely changed every single time. Well, we saw the first one that was called the Ramatam doing a loads of damage counter, the damage on the bench, but the Shaman got printed. So then we go to Rush Room and kind of like absorbing attacks and then sending it out and hit with that big, powerful rage sort of attack. And now we're going a completely different build with the Technical Machine Total Energize to power up some Pokemon. What are we powering up? So let's go Master Ogerpon. Help in likes of Gholdengo and Charizard and any sort of matchup with Pokemon which rely on abilities as their main attacker of choice. This, I think, is an incredible choice and really good read about some of the top players really came into this one. One same Master Ogerpon, we talked about it a lot. And we saw it that just no one really was playing around it a lot. People maybe playing some churros just like pick up some heavy damage Pokemon. But I think it's just incredibly powerful right now. It pretty much three shots in most of the format right now. And a lot of the decks are very focused on abilities and they don't really have that much gust. Well, we do have a lot of gusting, but if we're in a board which we can just use churros to pick up our Pokemon, it can be very, very difficult for the opponent to deal with a lone cornerstone from. I do think this is definitely a one-trick pony for this event. I think now that the source has been made, we know that cornerstone Pokemon is very, very powerful right now in this deck. I don't think we can see it return, but I think it's a really powerful option in this deck. I really love the NG switch. You can actually power up some of your Zoroarks much quickly on, or generally that Onko with ends PP up. We can go into like some Yudori or potentially even that Sob power with Ogerpon. It's only a natural spot. We saw obviously some people do play some Professor Churro scenario, but just trapping a Cleffa or potentially trapping a Badoom. Yes, I know you might be item locked, but trapping it in there and they can't move, that can be very, very scary in this sort, especially gaining you a few extra turns. I really, really like this build, and this isn't the only Zoroark deck we're going to be talking about. We're going to talk about the 8th place list, which of course got second place in seniors as well. As you know, I'm a huge fan of Owners Pokemon, and with the huge rise of Godfather, we could definitely see Zoroark definitely become a much more main stage right now in this format. Another one we want to look at is Gholdengo, the Piper's list here, and of course, does play that 101 line of Togekiss with that one copy of Rare Candy. And we did see it kind of had some success over in top tier, and sadly, her run did end up with prizing 3 copies of her Gimme Calls. Why do I think this is one of the best ways to play Gholdengo? Of course, first of all, there's Togekiss. It's my favorite Pokemon, and obviously it started in the format when we saw Gholdengo with Togekiss saying, oh, this is an amazing sort of partner. And we can go back to this going with, yeah, it's pretty powerful. Just one extra prize card, just sort of flip. It definitely is a very, very good, strong start. One other very interesting thing is with most Golden players is they are actually switching between their gimmicks. We talked a little bit about it in a couple of weeks ago and looking ahead that some people are going with the 50 HP gimmicks with their core family or potentially even the continuous rumble and others are a good attacking option. I do think the core family has some good merits because you can get out your Genesect, but of course you can get out like your Togepi's as well. So I think that's a much more stronger sort of play in that way. Have a good sort of setup every way around. No line of Sizzle, only the one copy of the baby Gholdengo, has a good sort of secondary attacking option in the late game. And of course, as it is Gholdengo, high counter support sorted, and that very big 4 copies with Cypher Minutes code breaking. This definitely was a much more of a surprise, which we saw in most of the deck. Some people kind of like went away from Cypher Minutes, maybe even 1 or 2. Going forward is much higher up, but I do think, especially with Togekiss and especially with Gholdengo, you want to kind of hit every single card you want to get to. So I do think having that 4 copies is very, very strong. Levencia and Arsenal, a split of stadium cards to stop making sure you're in the stadium war against the 2 jamming towers, and of course Levencia to get out the like the NGs because you can work a way around in the item lock to actually have the likes of Frilishes or Badoos, which are going to be an active spot. I think this is a very, very good build of Gholdengo, and obviously it's me. I would definitely be playing this build here, but this isn't the only Gholdengo list we're going to be talking about today. So to keep that in mind about the Gholdengo is really well. We're not the traditional ones which we're used to. And finally, last top 8 in Zoroark list we're going to talk about someone from Marco and of course Gabriel Fernandez, who got second place in seniors before he ages up in the Masters in next season. So this one here is very much similar to the one we talked about, but also completely different. One of the interesting things, it does play a 2-1 line of Toedscool. Toedscool, of course, has that slimy, I think it's like slimy mold ability, which obviously stops your opponent taking any card from them. Just go apart and pop it into their hands. So stopping likes of Night Stretcher, Superior End Retrieval. Basically, having a good match against Gholdengo and not relying on having the likes of Ogerpon, which we talked about just a little bit. Having a Belomos doing that as a good secondary attacking option in the late game. And it returns back to the mainstay where we saw Zoroark beforehand. We saw it on the channel as well. The Indie Mochi with Trent EX. Because now Zoroark can do additional more damage. Blood Moon Luna can hit huge 270 damage output, which is very, very powerful, right? Especially in this metagame. And of course, you could have Petra as another attacking option. One interesting thing is there is no ends PP up, so you are the very much the slow sort of 1 energy attachment per turn, but that's where we have likes of Ginny's Secret Act as another way to actually energy accelerate, also get that Binding Mochi, poisoning, activating that to do essentially 40 more damage. And we just see that he actually won against a couple of Cornerstone Ogerpon plays, but having scratch plays with Ends Zoroark, which I think is definitely a really nice thing to play around it. Of course, Unfair Stamp is a perfect sort of combination in this very aggressive style. I do think this is a very, very powerful one as well. You aren't using the Durant as your main attack, you're copying, of course, you're copying that like End Reshiram with Rage, Powerful Rage, or of course that other attack as well. to actually deal 210 damage, KOing likes of Serendipity, 2-1 Ogre and the like, which I think is really, really strong. Everyone, I'm very excited to see that we have two Zoroarks in top 8, and both of them are completely different. And even one of them going for second place over in the seniors division, but one of potentially going to be one of the best new players in the Arsenal Masters format. So I'm very, very excited to see what Gabriel's sort of journey is in his first season in the Masters division. And of course, now it wraps up the top 8. So I'm going to highlight some of the other decks as well. When we look at the other ones, because there's lots of Gardevoirs, lots of Dragapults, lots of Gholdengo, I didn't want to really kind of go, oh, this is like two cards different from other lists. I want to highlight some of the fun decks as well, also good well. The first one is this top 16 Gholdengo Celtic. Of course, it did end up winning in the seniors division. This isn't the winning list. This is the one that happened in the top 16 place over in the Masters division. And it was definitely a little bit different. The first thing is, having a 2-1-1 line of chemicals. You play every single different version of the chemical which you can play legally right now. You can get one to search energies, one to do potentially knock out as many coin flips as possible, one to get out basic Pokemon. This is obviously very, very powerful. Gholdengo is a great sort of draw factor in this deck, but of course the main sort of star in the show is having that Joltik. The Joltik can power up two incredibly powerful attackers. Of course, in hands to take additional more prize guard from these very low HP basic Pokemon, which definitely ruling the format after we see like some Gardevoir, Gholdengo, and Dragapult and Charizard up at the top. They put that to evolve from very low HP Pokemon, such that Iron Hands can use them from these on Watch Attack, take additional more prize guard from locking them on. And of course, having that Pikachu with that Resolute Heart is very, very difficult to actually KO a Pikachu in one hit because it wanted to get any damage counters. If it does enough to knock it out, its HP reduces down to only 10 HP remaining. So of course you have to get some poison effects or potentially just a little bit of chip damage on there beforehand. But of course has an attack to 300 damage, which nearly KOs most things in the format and can be very, very difficult to have an easy response. The Genesect is perfect because it gets out our Gholdengos, and generally I think having a Raider as well helps us out with Joltix, as well as also Pikachu and Iron Hands. The 4 copies of Bright Rock Scouting I think is a really unique sort of play, and because obviously it helps in the item log, and also it helps you get all of your basic Pokemon. This is a much more of a basic style deck, but also has some great sort of evolving Pokemon, like the likes of Gholdengo and like Aventula in the late sort of style term. We're going to give some of our guys a good free retreat option, basket for helping that around, potentially going around that Pikachu if they want to try to spread damage counter, and events here as well to help out of Gholdengo. So I like about this one is Gholdengo, of course, is a great attacking option, but you have so many more, much more powerful sort of styles of attacking option. The way how we get our energies is we're just fueling Joltix, powering up putting a lot of energies on our Iron Hands of Pikachu, and more of they're discarded, more we can unlock them like some superior energy retrieval in the late game. I think this is a very unique deck. I'm very excited to see exactly how this can really go in the format. Hopefully, it can continue to be a much more powerful deck right now in the format. I'm very excited to see how Gholdengo will evolve and will this be this best partner. The other one is his top 32 Tera Box by Alex Saminsky. And it's nice to see Tera Box actually kind of come back in its way. It was at the start of our Journey Together format. We've talked about it. It was like the very top archetype right now. It definitely kind of faded away a little bit, but it just come back right now in the latest style game because people realize that Tera Pokemon have so many amazing ones right now. Of course, we have the torrential pump on Tiamat's Welterman's Open as Shakeman is not in many decks right now, so it's a great sort of meta read to actually get the big one-hit KOs. Leafeon EX with the first attack worked perfect in the likes of the Charizard and Grimmsnarl that now ends Zoroark, which are roaming the format. The most Dragapult for draw potentially has a good sort of attack in the late game. Of course, the likes of Liz Clefairy, Pikachu, Glowing Espeon, and Terrapagos is our main big huge attackers in the early and late game. And there's not too many new cards that really did gain, apart from likes of Air Balloon to give some of our Pokemon a good sort of free retreat sort of pivot option. Quite a few retreaters. So I do really like this sort of play right now in this format. But of course, it's mainly for our likes of our Eevee, Leafeon or Noctowl to like kind of like go around this one. And of course, LCS gives all of our guys free retreat. Again, not too much to say about this one, but good to see that Tera Box actually did get a good sort of placement. Another good box of deck which it actually did do well is Eevee Ho-Oh. Now, a deck which I kind of did write out just a little bit. I think it wasn't as strong as I would have hoped it would be, but to see again that top 32 placement definitely gave a lot more hope in this sort of archetype, and potentially we could see a little bit more on it. Let's of course play 2 of the brand new cards here, the Reshiram for that good little late game potential that this deck really did require in it. And of course that Prism Energy as well, a way for us to actually attach all sorts of these energies and actually not worry about the likes of the Luminous energies, which we had beforehand, but instantly becomes a Colorless energy as soon as there's another Luminous energy attached. Prism energy now doesn't have that effect, so I'm a huge fan of this one. Legacy energy, of course, to give our two prize Pokemon now one prize, so I like that. And of course, that Monkey Dory EX, so we can actually use that to KO into Gardevoir. And if we have a Legacy energy attached to this one, as well as also if Monkey Dory is KO'd, putting if Petra is in play, the opponent takes 0 prize cards. So it's definitely something which is a nice little cheeky play that people can go with this one. I think this deck has a ton of potential right now, especially after the top 32 showing. We could see a lot more of this one. Again, we've seen it before where a deck gets a good sort of run at tournament, i.e. Regidrago V-Star, and also becomes a huge powerhouse. Now, I'm not saying this could be the next Regidrago V-Star, but I can say that much more people will definitely put a lot more credit into this now. It did get that top 32 placement at Worlds. And of course, one of the big sort of things as well is the highest places by Grimmsnarl was in fact 41st place, so still top 64, which is still pretty powerful, but I expected a lot from this deck. Comparing from the Japan Championships, where it got second place and it had multiple sort of top 16 placements as well, the Champions League beforehand did incredibly well as well, having like basically 3 of the lists were identical in this one. So basically kind of like falling from the face of the earth. Now, of course, it did do pretty well over at NEIC, and with Gardevoir being so prevalent right now, it just might not be the time for it right now. So that potentially could be why I would say minus going to might just be kind of be put in a binder just on the back burner right now, just while the meta game settles right now. Until we're away from the Monkey Doris Wars where we can actually really activate it to our fullest effect with our Frostlass. It did of course gain that Evelyn, so kind of making sure our Nice going to have that good Fury pivot option, but that's really going to be about it. Now, of course, I want to look at this Eevee box, which should get top 64 as well. And again, I really like to see some fun, creative archetypes really kind of go around this one. Now, of course, the main sort of reason why this was played in this one is very great for a game matchup. And of course, this is the reason why it was played so heavily. If it's a Flare and you to actually KO any of the Gholdengo's out there, which I think is very powerful. And of course, we do have that Leafeon to help out on Charizard and Zoroark and minus Grimmsnarl, and Weltering Master Ogerpon for that bench sniping of capability. I think this deck could definitely continue to do incredibly well, and maybe it might see a little bit less play if we're going to see a lot more hate on Gholdengo, and people aren't realizing how powerful Gholdengo really did. So you might see Gholdengo kind of put a little bit step back, but still going to be up there. I feel like in the bracket for quite a while. So now after looking at this one, what can we really expect from the metagame moving forward? The first thing I could definitely a huge takeaway is most less decks will be really taking on Gholdengo. This format felt like there was a lot of decks really kind of like trying to go have the best of a matchup possible against Gholdengo, and we did see that kind of like shine through. Some powerful archetypes did kind of like go well. I feel like the Dusknoir and Charizard really kind of like were up at the very top. But another thing I could see here is we could see more of an increase in ends Zoroark being played, but having Gabriel Fernandez get playing it in the second place at seniors, and of course getting 2 top 8 placements, and Gardevoir winning the event. And right now, we're going to see Gardevoir potentially be at the very top again with Mega Evolution coming out with Mega Gardevoir. We see a much more of an increase in Zoroark being played to really counteract this sort of play. We aren't really seeing any Seamus played in deck, so could we potentially return to the likes of a just a chuck a 2-1 or a 2-2 line of Dramatam kind of going back into the list, so actually helping out in that sort of way. Dusknoir is definitely the main partner for Dragapult, and it definitely has been like that for quite a while, and we could definitely see this continue. Having that more of a Dusknoir, it really does unlock Dragapult to actually become much more of a checkmatey style deck, which it definitely was before the sort of format, where it went back to more of a straight pull, and I do think like of the Dusknoir is going to become a much more stronger play. Gardevoir is still going to be up the top. I can expect Gardevoir to be much more of a stronger sort of play going forward. It's had obviously it won NEIC, it won Worlds. It's always going to be in the finals, and it is still always going to be there. We could see a lot more Tekken cards going against Gardevoir. We could see Enzora become a much more idle placement decks, or we could see some archetypes generally just kind of little dark decks try and compete with this one, like Charizard and Grimmsnarl, which I do think it might actually see this a little bit less play. They didn't do as most people didn't put as much respect into this in this format. Again, it could just be said that it wasn't the right time. People weren't expecting. We were expecting a lot from Monkey Dory, so we're going to see a lot less Grimmsnarl. I do think this meta game is quite exciting because it completely has changed around a bit. So when we look at Worlds last year, it really put Regidrago as the very much big BDIF. And we kind of expected this to be a Gholdengo, but I think after the results we saw, we're not going to get that at all from Gholdengo. We saw the response from this one. It was still very powerful, but wasn't as strong as people really hoped for. I do think we've got to see some good sort of partners kind of really try now. The Gholdengo with the likes of Joltik Box, I think that's going to be a very powerful archetype. And Zoroark, I think, is going to have a huge increase because it has a great response in the metagame. And we saw two fabulous or very different sort of approaches to the list. And if we will see Gardevoir still up there at the very top. So looking ahead of this new format, we're back to Gardevoir and Dragapult back at the top. And Gholdengo, was it generally overhyped or generally were people just absolutely prepared for this one and try to go around this as best as possible? And most importantly, how Megas really impact this format? If you want to find that, tune into the channel tomorrow when I will be breaking down the Japan's Mega Evolutions meta game. It's been a few weeks off and we've got to see exactly how much has changed. And spoiler alert, Gardevoir is at the top by a significant amount. So, hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you have, please don't forget to like, subscribe, comment down below. What do you think of this Pokemon World Championships? Of course, tomorrow I'm going to break down some new cards as well that got revealed. And I'm doing this. I think it's a very, very exciting time. I always love these sort of format afterwards where you get to reflect and see exactly what were the top decks. Again, huge congratulations to everyone who played, and of course, Riley for winning the Masters sort of division. So I'll see you guys tomorrow for another video. For now.